Today, we're truly excited to have Maria Nazareth on the podcast. Maria prides herself on her career, her family, and her active social endeavours. She's focused on helping clients on their digital transformation journey by harnessing their data to make more informed decisions. For over 2 decades, Maria has worked at the intersection of banking and financial services and technology. The depth and breadth of her experience really helps clients decipher the signal from the noise and recognizes opportunities to implement competition busting digital initiatives using data as an asset. As a founding member of Women Leaders in Data and AI, and also a member of Chief, which is designed for women in senior positions to strengthen their leadership, magnify their influence, and pave the way to bring others with them, Maria is a true inspiration to others. And we're really excited to talk through this with Maria and to hear her version of success. And it's absolutely fantastic to be here with you, Maria. How are you?
I am good today, Rob. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well. I hope that by the time that we put this podcast out, that it's still this time of year, because we're now in the sunshine and the sun is beaming down on us here in the UK.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be doing this today with you. So
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Look, we've been trying to get you on the podcast, Maria, for some time, and it's David and I have been really truly excited about this one because obviously we've known each other for a while. I think you're a fantastic person first and foremost. I love chatting with you at any point.
thank you.
So being able to just get to share a bit about you and the journey that you have been on and where you are today and and the world that you live in is going to be brilliant. David, as always, fantastic that you're here with us.
Always a pleasure to be here. Very much looking forward to this one.
Yeah. So Maria, the title of the podcast, as you know, is Search and Succeed. And on our very first podcast, we talk a bit about search and succeed. We talk about everyone is looking for their own version of success. When you hear the phrase, when you hear me talking about it, or just the phrase generally, what's your immediate thoughts? What does it mean to you?
So for me, in my mind, succeed is almost like an endpoint, like you're there, right? For me, success is not an endpoint, it's a journey. And I think at different points in your life, personal life, work life, success means very different things to you. And as long as you realize that it's a journey and you're continuing on the journey, I think that's what makes you successful. The search part of it is being curious, right? Trying to learn more, trying to absorb more, trying to gather. I'm a data analytics and AI person, so trying to gather that data, trying to gather that information, and to be able to help you make those informed decisions, right? And take those appropriate actions, whether it's in your, about finding the right job or finding the right solution for your customer, or even in your personal life, right? So find that innate curiosity to continue on your journey is what I think of when I think of Search and Succeed.
Yeah. Do you find it easy to organize and aim for your own version of success? Like when you talk about being curious and having the ability to go and search for something and then look to find it and make it happen. How do you do that in your life?
So I believe that one needs to be, especially in today's day and age, right? But I think the we need to develop certain skills if we don't have them innately. But one of those is to be a lifelong learner, right? Be curious about new topics, new advances, new technologies, and it doesn't have to be only work related, right? I'm a technology person, but you might be interested in reading a medical article and getting really smart on certain other factors, right? But being that lifelong learner is important, and for me, that's just part of my personality. And Rob, you've known me for some time. You know, I analyze everything to death. So, learning something, processing it, and helping, make that decision is important to me. And I think that's why I'm also in the world of data analytics,
Yeah.
because it just comes natural to me. I do think you have to be very organized, right? As you move up the work ladder, or as you expand on the home front, being organized is so important in order to be able to juggle everything, right?
Yeah.
People talk about having it all, and they talk about work-life balance. And I always say it's not about the balance; it's about the choices and prioritizing things and making those right choices, those right decisions. And it comes back to this to what I said, right? It's a journey. So you might not have everything at that particular point, but that does not mean you cannot have it across a time period.
Yeah.
Right. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, completely. And as you say, it's not all work, in fact, it's only partially work, because it could be your family, it could be your health, it could be other things that you're just interested in. And I talk to my children all the time about choices, as you say there. And yet, as a parent, when you're involved in doing the parenting thing, the choices that you make about your own actions are so spontaneous, right? And then you rethink about it later, and you try and learn, as you say, from your actions. So it's all encompassed, isn't it, in every facet of life, to try and get the optimum outcome.
Yeah.
You said you call yourself analytical. What are the pros and cons of being analytical, Maria?
Well, you'll have to ask my husband that one. I don't think there are cons to being analytical, to be honest. I really truly believe in the concept of making informed decisions. That's what I do with my family. That's what I do with the people I work. That's what I do with myself, right? So you try and get as much information you can on a topic, and you analyze it. You apply your critical thinking abilities, your creativity, and you try and make the best decision. And as I said, there's a reason I'm in this field, is because this is just who I am. But I think that's how I approach everything in life, right? And yeah, so I don't think there are cons in being analytical. The once in a while you do need to disconnect and just, live life, and you go on vacation and sit down on the beach and read a book and not think about data and numbers and things like that. But I don't think there are cons to that one, Rob. You'll have to keep me honest on that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that clearly there's different types of people, aren't there? And when people aren't analytical, or they're a bit more laissez-faire about the decisions that they make, being an analytical person, and I am one too, it's hard to compute and to get to understand how those people kind of get through their life. I mean, clearly they do, right? And they do it, I'm sure, very well. But if you are an analytical person, it just seems so bizarre not to be analytical in the decisions that you make.
Yeah, I actually have a theory about that. I read somewhere a long time ago in my life, I guess when I was still a teenager, the decisions you make in the first 20 seconds are the same decisions you will make at the end of 2 hours. Because over a period of time, we develop that sixth sense or gut feeling or whatever. But it's basically accumulation of all our experiences and decision making. So, even if they are, as you said, making decisions that you don't think they've put in thought through, they have put in thought through it throughout their life that enables that decision making.
Yeah,
that's
great.
my concept.
Yeah, I really like that. I might think about that. I probably will do every time I make a long
winded decision on something, I'll probably think, what did I think that when in the first 20 seconds of that contemplation?
I guess that's the one potential con. It can whether it is the 20 seconds or whether it's the 2 hours, it's the utilizing the time between the two in the best way possible, so that you're not constantly over analyzing and going back over things, second guessing yourself, etc., etc.
Yeah. And actually, just on that, because we talk about this world of this pace that we're in, how everything is done so quickly now. Now with AI coming in, everything's going to be even quicker. And we talk through, past generations of response time. Back in the olden days, quote unquote, where things were done by post and then fax machine, and before the days of email, and now we've got WhatsApp, etc. But the response rate, doesn't necessarily need to be so quick, because actually there's a lot to be said about thinking time. And so I think thinking time is still a really important aspect on calculating and trying to get to the right solution on something. But again, I take your point very much so on that immediate gut feel as to what the response might be, even once that process has happened.
Absolutely. And we spoke about what succeeds means to you and the journey that you go on in order to achieve success. But I think in order to go on any journey in life, whether it is work related, whether it's family related, whether it's achieving a goal in your personal life, fitness, health, whatever it may be, there needs to be drivers behind wanting to go on that journey. What is it that drives you, Maria? What motivates you?
So I love to learn, right? So for me, I think I was very lucky to land in the field of data and analytics, to be honest, because ever since I started this journey, it has been evolving, right? I actually started out as a C++ programmer way back in the day. I guess I'm aging myself. And then came, the internet, and then came the internet at big scale, right, where we could actually leverage it. And then came the world of big data, then came the world of cloud, and now we are in the world of generative AI. And every one of these big milestones has changed the way we have been able to take advantage of the data, of the information, and make decisions. So for me, what keeps me going is the fact that I'm learning something new ever so often, and it keeps me it keeps it interesting for me, right? And then I'm also a management consultant, and that's the other part of me, because and Rob, you know this about me, but I go and talk to total strangers. I have no problem, right? So I'm one of those people. So it enables me to also work on the people aspects of it, right? It gives me the exposure to the people aspects of it. So I think I have been very lucky to be able to find a role that enables me to draw on both my strengths and both my and things I enjoy, right? These are the things I enjoy. I am probably not one of those people you want to lock up in a room and say, go solve this and work on this for a year.
Yeah.
Because I will really miss the human interaction, and I truly get a energy high of meeting up with people and talking with people. But I also get an energy high of continuously learning something and growing, and to be able to take that and apply it to something. I think those are, so it's not motivation, but I think it is about finding out who you are and what you want to do, and then finding those opportunities. And I'm very lucky to be able to have found those.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I know we're kind of past the pandemic a little bit, and you don't want to dwell on that period. It was a really tough period for a lot of people. But when it came down to the lack of human interaction part, I know as we're doing right now, it's on video. But how did you deal with that, Maria, being such a people person?
Well, First of all, I had to decorate my office because I never spent time on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Good
got
reason.
tired of seeing the blank wall behind me, so I had to decorate my office. But funnily enough, Zoom and Teams and all the video conference tools and technologies that are available now,
Mm.
I think really, really helped with the people interaction. It's still not the same as meeting it in person. And up to date, I walk up to like people and say, "Oh, you look exactly like how you do on your video, or you're much taller than I imagined you are on your video, or
Yeah.
much shorter, depending, right?"
Yeah.
So it's a nice way. I think the video conferencing was really a nice way to keep that human interaction,
Mm.
but it is definitely not a substitute in my world for an in-person interaction. But it
Yeah.
does enable the fact that you can meet more people, right? When you're sitting in your home office, you can meet people in California and then have a conversation with someone in New York, right?
Yeah.
Or London, right? You
Yeah.
don't have to be in all those cities. So it does enable that. And I think it's like it's a support to the real human in-person interaction. I don't believe it will ever replace that.
Yeah. I mean, generationally, do you think that it might? Do you think the future generations are as put as much importance on that as our generations that have always been about the people side of things?
So as a mother to two teenage boys, I have two boys, 15 and 17.
Mm.
I see them interacting just as much with their peers as we did growing up. Like I don't think it's replaced the human interaction totally. They do play video games much better than we did because they chat with their friends and they're all
Yeah.
playing the same game together.
Yeah.
And they do that from time to time, but that does not stop them from going and playing soccer or football or baseball, or just going for a run. I got a son who does track, so just going on a run with his buddies,
Yeah.
right? I think as I'm going to get philosophical here on Europe, I think as a human race, the interaction we are social beings. That is really important to us.
Couldn't agree
And
more.
yeah, and some people, as I said, get more of an energy high from being around people, and some people need it in a more limited dose. But I think we all do need it at the end of the day. Though Apple just released their new technology yesterday, and I'm waiting to see how that changes the human interaction abilities.
That's their new VR technology, right?
Yes, the whole virtual reality, the whole virtual metaverse, the whole virtual world is definitely, something that will definitely shape the way we interact more strongly. It's already shaped it to an extent, but more strongly.
Mm.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because obviously there was news recently about Mark Zuckerberg, I suppose, quietly trying to pull away from the metaverse side of things and the investment that he'd made on it, because the thought of people interacting in this virtual world is one that makes me concerned, not only for it to work, because I do think that we're social beings and we want to be socially interactive, but also if it does mean that in future generations that actually people are just going to be sat inside and interacting through the virtual world, which quite honestly just doesn't appeal to me and scares me a little bit, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think there's a place for it. My parents don't live in the same country as me, and though like one wonderful use case I'd see for it is for them to interact with my kids.
Yeah.
It's different to do it via Zoom and different to do it on phone call. But if you could get them both in a virtual world and enable them to interact together, I think that would bring people closer together, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a space for it, and
Yeah.
there's a space for the human interaction.
That's it.
Right. And we need to just find the balance.
Yeah. And it's the same, I think, with the generative AI conversation, which we'll come on to soon, but it's that there's a room for it. It's to be used and it'll change the world, but it's not necessarily to replace the human per se or to replace jobs. It's to accentuate it. But that human interaction bit, I'm completely agreeing with you on that. Albeit I was on a train not so long ago, and 6 young teenagers got on, and I was thinking, oh God, they're going to be really loud, and I just want to sit here quietly on the train. And they get on, and they all had their heads in the phone. They didn't say a word to each other, and I was thinking, oh, well, good for me, I suppose, because I can sit here and relax. But it wasn't brilliant from a social interaction perspective.
Well, they might have been talking to each other on their phones, Rob. You never know.
Yeah, this is true. So do you find that when it comes to success for you, Maria, that work we know is really important to you and the work that you do with your clients, but also how you level and balance that off with family? You mentioned about your sons and your husband. Do you find that there's a constant balance that you're searching for, or do you feel that you get it quite right?
I think every day is different, Rob. And there are some days that work takes more of my time, and there are some days that family takes more of my time. And don't forget my dog. I have a border collie by the name of Loki, so he gets a shout out.
Lovely.
But it's about, as I said, it's about balancing those priorities. And no day is at 50-50, right? So there are some days where work will take a little more of you, and there are some days that you'll be able to spend more time with your family, right?
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And as long as you have the mindset that you're not looking for the perfect thing.
Yeah.
I think in consulting we say don't let the perfect get in the way of the good, right?
Yeah.
So as long as you're not looking for the perfect thing, and you enjoy what you're doing at that moment, right? For me, I think that is important. If you are spending more time at work, do something that you're really enjoying, that you find is valuable to you or valuable to your to the people you work with or the people you work for. And if you're spending time with your family at that point of time, enjoy that time with the family. Don't think about work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're all humans, and there's obviously something probably at the back of our mind, but really enjoy that moment, right? And I think making the most of those moments, I think is what I try and do.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's so easy to say what you say, but actually then to put it into action, and it makes it makes such sense, right? To really be in that moment at that time, to appreciate it, because if you're in the moment with your family, then they'll feel like you're in the moment with them, and then if you're in the moment with your clients and the work that you're doing and you're deep diving into that, I think you'll probably be at your optimum best there as well. I think if you're kind of a little bit all over the place with either, you're probably not necessarily getting, as I say, the optimum outcome of either or.
And no one's happy in the end.
Yeah.
Not even you.
Yeah. And you talk about enjoyment. So the as you know, David and I spend our working life talking to people about their careers, such as the industry that we're in. And the career that you've had, Maria, you must enjoy what you do. You said yourself you're in data and analytics and AI world, and based on what you just said, I imagine that you enjoy your time and you are fully immersed in your time when you're at work, so to speak, work versus play and all that. But how would you describe the trajectory that you've had, or how have you achieved the trajectory that you've had to where you are today, Maria?
It's not been a straight line, for sure. I think very few people's careers are straight line paths to where they are, in my opinion.
Okay.
And for those who are, well, good for them. I'm really happy for them. Mine was definitely not a straight path.
Yeah.
I started out actually as a physics student. That's my major. My undergrad major is I'm a physics student.
Okay.
And physics was the love of my life. It probably still is. But then came IT, and then came the people part, and I realized I needed to find a balance between, my technical way of thinking and the engineering and the science mindset and the people part, and that was the journey for me to find that balance. So like very cool physics people, what I decided to do was then move to IT,
Yeah.
right? To be my cooler part, that tells you that. And then I was lucky to find out consulting, right? That was my first job out of school. So it was very lucky to find that job. And I really enjoyed it, right? And for me, it was about picking up projects and picking up technologies that kept me interested and I really enjoyed. And I was lucky enough to be able to have those choices. Um, some part down my career, I also realized that I had only done consulting all my life. So I decided to go to industry. And I took a break from consulting, went to industry, and I spent wonderful 3+ years there.
Mm.
And I enjoyed it. But what I realized is I was a consultant at heart. So I came back, right? But that was part of the journey, to realize who you are and what you enjoy and what you're truly good at, right? And what truly gives you happiness, right? And so I came back to consulting, and I will never leave, because I found out who I am. But I think for me, it has been a journey of understanding myself better, understanding what the types of roles I do well, what are the types of roles that give me happiness, and in a space that I enjoy, right? While at the same time being able to, um, find time for the other things I love, right? Whether it's my family or going hiking with my dog, or my zillion plants, but it's about finding that, right? Finding what gives you the most happiness, what gives you the most enjoyment. And as I said, I've been very lucky to get the opportunities I have. And I've made use of every opportunity I did get.
Yeah.
I hope to the best I could. Yeah, but I think it's about that, right? Finding the opportunities that give you the happiness, give you the right path. And whether it was when my career was going through, whether it was the internet boom happened, or whether the big data boom happened, the cloud boom happened, or now the Gen AI boom is happening. It's about, finding those milestones or finding those opportunities. And those are the bigger ones, right? But the smaller ones, like what type of work do you really want to do, right? And it changes, right? 20 years ago, what I thought was really cool, now it is very different, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it isn't cool, but I'm saying it is different. So just finding those opportunities, but definitely not a straight path throughout, definitely not a straight path.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because what jumps out to me is that you learn a lot about yourself when you weren't doing something rather than when you were doing it. Does that make sense? Not being in consulting made you realize that you were a consultant, really. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. We speak to people who maybe spend only a short amount of time at a company, and they're bothered that maybe it impacts their resume, their CV. But actually, it's about taking the positive out of any situation and learning what it is that you and where it is that you want to be in that moment.
I'm sure there was huge positives though. Going on the other side of the desk, so to speak, into industry for a while gives you, correct me if I'm wrong, but probably gave you a lot of perspective on how your clients view you when you're on the other side of the desk in consulting functions.
Yeah. And David, you hit on a point that's really near and dear to my soul. The reason I like consulting is because consulting is truly a team sport. And it's a team sport, and I don't mean it by saying someone from this group or someone with that technology skill, right? It's a team sport that you bring people together who have diverse ways of thinking. And all we are doing is we're learning to think better. We're learning to think differently. And you're right. That time that I spent in industry gave me a totally different way of thinking than when I was a consultant. And it helps me. It helps me problem solve today, right? It helps me problem solve today. But I think learning those different ways of thinking is what you get from experiencing different experience, like through different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, no regret. Like Rob, you talked about people saying I spent 1 year at this place and how they're going to look at my resume. It's probably the best thing I did for myself, right?
Yeah.
Taking those 3+ years and spending it in another um, way of working, right?
Just
It's
adding
been nice.
weapons to your arsenal,
Yes.
different strings to your bow, looking at things from different perspectives, coming at things in different ways of analyzing things. As you said, you love to analyze things. So throughout that whole journey that you had, when did data and AI come into things, or data in its form many years ago, and now what has evolved into what we know as AI today?
Yeah, that's been the only constant in my life, David, the data analytics and AI. Now AI, and AI has been around for a long time, right? When we were like from the 1940s, right? We've
Mm-hmm.
just gotten better at using the technology has enabled us to use those algorithms and those models to make better decisions now. But all throughout my career, that's been the one constant, the data and the analytics piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
It has just evolved as technology has evolved and how we have been able to take advantage of it. And like even the generative AI pieces, right? Those, like, some of those models are from the 1940s, the 1950s, and now we have the technology, we have the processing speed to be able to actually take advantage of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for me, it's been fascinating. Like, I think my generation, it has been really fascinating. We worked on what we used to call the dumb Unix terminals, right, attached to the central computing system, to the days of like Chat GPT 4, right,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still evolving, or the metaverse, and it's still evolving,
Yeah.
right. But data has been definitely the constant in my life.
And so just to, I guess, go a little bit more granular, knowing what you do, financial services is a big focus for you specifically. How long have you been operating in that world? And what, in the acceleration that we've seen throughout, because we've spoken in previous podcasts that we've done about the acceleration of technology in general, and I think AI is a good example of that. What maybe happened in a 40-year period was equal to the latter 20-year period, which is equal to the latter 10-year period, and the acceleration just keeps happening. As I said, how long have you been focusing on the financial services space, and what impact do you see technology, data, and AI having in that space over the coming years?
So David, I've been in the financial services space now for over 2 decades. So it's
Okay.
sort of been a long time. And I've really seen, as an industry, the banking industry really take advantage of the technology, like be at the forefront to take advantage of the technology. And it's been interesting to the days when my father would go to the bank every Sunday after church, right? He'd go to church, then he'd go to the bank. It was like a regular routine for him. And I recently went to my bank to get a cashier's check, which apparently you don't need to go in person anymore now, anyways. But I went to my bank and they said, "Oh, you haven't been here since 2017." I'm like, "Yeah, why should I come in?" Like, there is absolutely no reason for me to come in.
Yeah.
But you still have my business because you, as a bank, have made, invested in digital, so that your digital apps are so easy to use and trustworthy that I continue to give you my business, right?
Yeah.
But I think the banking industry has really taken advantage of the of how technology has expanded, right from better customer service and um, like even the generative AI use cases and the products we are building right now of like for hyper personalization, right? Reaching out to David, like how David wants to be spoken to, communicated to, the type of
Mm-hmm.
media they used to communicate to, versus the way they would reach out to Rob. Rob would be very different. Like you might like emails, and Rob, I know, loves chat messages, right? So and the text you write in it, and how do you communicate to the person? So really getting personal, not only knowing you for your bank account and the dollar amount and your credit card and whatever other loans you might have, but knowing you for the human being, knowing you for, oh, there's a wedding coming up and maybe you should be saving for it, or your kid's going to graduate and go to college, and so hey, you're going to need some money soon, right? So but I think banks are taking advantage of that in like hyper personalization, getting really more efficient with operational cost and getting like reducing those costs so that they can give back the clients, right? Reducing the fees, reducing the cost, and just making the experience much better. And if you think about just the world of how technology evolved and how banks have taken advantage of it at every step, I think it's as I said, I very lucky to be in this industry, because they are on. I think the financial services industry is definitely on the cutting edge of things.
That customer experience side, as a general user myself of banks, I can't say I'm seeing that hyper personalization yet, but I imagine it's something that's to come in the coming years.
Yeah, I would say give it a few months, Rob.
Wow.
With some of the generative AI use that we are seeing in the industry, give it a few months. And that's the great part about technology, right? With every leap we make, the acceleration path is like it becomes more exponential than linear.
How do banking, or let's say personal banking organizations mitigate? Because I'm just sort of running this through in my mind. Let's say the AI, the generative AI learns that you prefer a more casual form of communication, and they corresponding with you more on message, instant message, that type of thing. I think one of the things that general consumers worry about is security, obviously, when it comes to their banking. And I feel like, and you may have a fair amount to say on this, I feel like if I was being contacted or communicated from my bank in such a casual way, which I may enjoy, but I may not have faith that it's what it appears to be on the tin. How do you as the service provider, or how does the bank ensure that they are sort of mitigating that risk?
So I think in today's world, right, if I have to think about it, there is definitely an increased adoption in AI, which is enabling them to, reach out to you in the way you like to be reached out to, right? They're also using AI to improve this service. But in addition to that, there is an extra emphasis on ethics and transparency. So even if you think about using AI and using the generative AI sections, how do you prevent those biases? Because these are AI models. So how do you prevent biases? How do you use AI responsibly? I think that is one factor that the banks or the financial institutions, actually any firm in the world, any company in the world, needs to really think about. The other area is cybersecurity. David, you touched on that, right? Because as more data is getting generated, as more data is getting stored, there's a greater need for cybersecurity measures to protect it from cyber threats, right? And we're going to see this, an increase of these threats in the next 5 to 10 years, in my opinion. The third area is data. The amount of data we collect on anyone is going to keep growing, right? So as we're going to continue to see the growth of data, how do you take advantage of that data to make better decisions for you, right? And I think the most important thing in the end, and Rob, we talked about this a little, is the human collaboration, right? The human AI collaboration. Because, David, even though there is probably a chatbot, right, a Gen AI chatbot writing you that message, at the end of the day, there is a human AI collaboration. So how you respond to it and how you the actions you take from it will teach that algorithm to communicate with you better, right? And they might find that when they write to you in a very informal manner on a chat tool or Insta, whatever, you do not react well, and so they would course correct to become more formal. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
So the human AI piece is important because in turn, we as humans are training the AI on how to communicate with us.
I saw an advert in the UK. There's a commercial on TV. I think it was for a bank. Don't hold me to it. But they're selling something, and then there's a customer service element to it. But they're actually selling the fact that you're going to speak to a human at the end. In fact, the commercial was presented by a robot, and then it finished off by saying, but don't worry, you won't speak to a robot, you'll actually speak to a human. And everyone felt sorry for the robot on the advert, right? On the commercial. Because I think, as we say, I think the majority of this generation are concerned about that robotic response, and is it really a human interaction that's deciding the type of relationship that they have with the bank or with the retail company, whoever it might be. But actually, no, it's still the human at the end of it. And we talked before about hoping that continues, but obviously how it evolves, I suppose, is yet to still be seen over time.
Yeah, I think there will be a time where we won't be able to figure out whether it's a human or a robot, because the robot will be very human in its interaction with you, right? Because the robot is learning from millions of other human interactions, as well as you communicating with the robot. So I am looking forward to that day and age.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are, especially the people who are on their phone to their bank on the automated system, saying the same answer over and over again because they can't get it to understand them. I'm sure once we eradicate that, it will be a good path forward.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't cannibalize our industry, the search industry, too much, though. That's something to be seen.
Yeah, I think every industry is going to get impacted by it in some form or shape. Yesterday, I saw an advertisement. It was posted on LinkedIn, and they had a big sign on the building, and they said, "Come join the construction industry, because AI is not going to be taking over the construction industry." And I was thinking, well, the robotic arms have been around for some time. They've already affected it in some form or shape, whether it is the construction industry or whether it is medical or whether it is, customer service, right? Now you have the chatbot, but it's affected it. And I think I'm getting philosophical on you, Europe, is I think as a race, we have to grow, and we need to the skill, do what humans do best, right? What humans do best is critical thinking and creativity and connecting with people, right? And everything else that is like repetitive or mundane is probably going to get replaced by an AI bot at some point of time, right? But the creativity that you bring, like, is different, right? Like the AI bot can paint like a Picasso, but there still has to be a Picasso. Right. So I think that as I said, I have two growing teens, and that's what I tell them. I'm like, you learn to continuously learn and teach yourself, and then, develop those skills that are not replaceable.
There's a lot of people in this world, and I suppose there's only one Picasso. So it's going to be interesting in 50 years to see what how humans need to be in order to create, I suppose, career success and monetary success. But that's all to be seen, right? That critical thinking and how we think is definitely going to change, and already has done. as far as how we can be impactful and how we can be effective and how we can be relevant. So yeah, we're certainly in an amazing period, that is for sure. We will talk about the beginning of the first 6 months of 2023. I think we will talk about it for forever, potentially.
Yes, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah,
Just definitely interesting times for sure.
Yeah, you talked before about diversity, Maria, and people are just people, but ultimately, you are a very successful woman in your industry. You've been recognized for that within the data and AI space. I know you just get on with your job every day and you're very humble in the way that you do it, but do you recognize, how do you feel about that? Do you recognize it yourself? Have you had challenges yourself over time?
Well, thank you for the compliment in the first place, but for me, as I said, the reason I like consulting is because it's about diversity of thought. I very rarely walk into the room and I say, "Oh, am I the only woman in the room?" Or but what I look at is diversity of thought, because we all come from very different experiences, and that shapes that experience, and that exposure shapes our way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
And for me, working with different people is important because I learn from different ways of thinking. Um, as a woman leader, and Rob, you know this about me, is I'm definitely very committed to the fact of mentoring younger women. Through most of my career, I'm very grateful to have had some really good mentors who've helped me through the journey.
Yeah.
And most of them have been men, right? And a large part of who I am today is because these people took the time out to mentor me, right?
Yeah.
But what I realized is I didn't really have too many women mentors. So that is an area I definitely spend a lot of time on. Mentoring our next generation. And I think that is so important in this day and age, because as I said, people think differently based on different experiences.
Yeah.
And so, diversity in the workforce does not mean, diversity in the workforce means diversity of thinking in my head, right?
Yeah.
And so how do we bring people with different areas of thinking into the workforce? And I've definitely, I'm a founding member of an organization called Women Leaders in Data and AI. So since data is still close to my space, to my heart, that's an area I focus on giving back, and also part of other organizations, including Chief. But I think helping build a more diverse workforce is what is important to me.
Yeah.
But most of the times, Rob, I'll be honest with you, I walk into the room and I don't even realize that I'm the only woman sometimes. It's just I don't know. I guess I grew up in the science and technology field and there were more men in the field. And so I
You
guess
just get on with it. Yeah.
They're all people at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that you've had certain moments where it's felt like, there's been a level of potential misogyny at some point in some respects. But, I certainly think that there is, we live in a world now where, equality, DE&I is so prevalent, right? That it should really be relevant, I suppose. But do you think that there is a good future for women specifically within the data and AI sector?
Absolutely. I think that it is a sector which I think is very conducive to women, and I'm not saying that because I'm a woman, is because I think women bring like a structured way of thinking, like the age-old adage is, the checklist. You make a list and you you say, okay, very methodical, very very thought through way of thinking. And if you think about analytics, that's what analytics is, right?
Yeah.
You take all your pieces of information and you think through it, and you do and you make a decision based on it. And I think there's definitely a lot of potential for the next generation of women to grow in this field. And especially as we talked about generative AI, and I talked about biases, right? So having the right emotional intelligence to be able to see that bias in the code, to be able to to be able to process that data, and to be able to do that. And as you talked about, Rob, there are so many opportunities opening up, and the focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion is so huge at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there are more opportunities than there were when I was growing up, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think the world has also changed. Like as I said, I have two boys, and they don't even think about the girls in their class being any different from them, if that, right?
Sure.
So I think our way of thinking has also evolved, and I think there's definitely it's going to be fun times.
Yeah. I remember many years ago presenting to a client on subconscious biases in the workplace, and around women, I suppose, getting to a very senior level within a business, and the maternal challenges that come along with that. And clearly you've gone through it, Maria. How do you feel that some people struggle to overcome, who've got amazing skill sets and personalities, but maybe perhaps struggle to overcome the balancing of becoming a mother and having time off potentially, but still wanting to be super focused on their career and getting to the most senior levels that they can and deserve to become? What advice would you perhaps give to someone who's going through that period of their career?
I think the one thing I learned from being a mother, the first thing I learned, which was very shocking to me, was you become really humble really soon. And the advice I would give is you cannot do everything on your own. As if you think you are going to be able to do everything on your own, you're not superhuman. You're going to have to rely on help, right? You're going to need a support system. I think the phrase is it takes a village, but it's true, it does take a village. And whether that support system is your spouse, your extended family, or hired help, neighbors, friends, but you are going to need a support system, right? That's the only way to do it. Doing it on your own is just, I have a lot of friends who have been women friends who are successful, and every one of us have that in common. We created our support system, right? We did not necessarily inherit it or have it when we had our kids, but we created that support system. And that's the piece of advice I would give. Find your support system, and remember that it's about choices. And at different stages in your life, you will make different choices. And sometimes on different days, you will make different choices, right? Yeah. But be thoughtful that you're making that choice, and definitely ask for help when you need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really insightful. And again, it sounds so obvious, but at the same time, I bet there's many people that listen to this and go, gosh, I didn't really think about that. Here I was just trying to get on with being a mother and being someone who's on an upwards trajectory in their career. But, in hindsight, I look back and I didn't quite create that for myself. And again, I think we talked about this near the beginning of this podcast. We talked about structuring and organizing and making those decisions analytically to create a process that ultimately leads to that success. I think there's a lot of narrative about women perhaps not getting up to the C-suite of organizations based on other factors potentially. Do you think there's something to be said about that as well, or do you think it's really, in the control of the individual and the person as to what their obstacles are to keep moving forwards and and have a family?
So I don't know about women not getting to the C-suite because, as I said, I'm a founding member of the organization called WILDA, Women Leaders in Data and AI, and there are lots of women there in the C-suite.
Yeah, there are.
So yeah. So, but I think, our generation, women were raised a little differently in a different way of thinking. And to use those strengths as you move up, those are your strengths, those are not weaknesses. And I think sometimes it takes time for you to realize that those are strengths and not weaknesses. But to understand what your strengths are and leverage those, right? Know yourself best. So you know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what you're going to lean on your team for, and what you're going to ask for support from your leaders from, right? That thing I said about asking for help doesn't only go on the home front, it goes to the work front too. And people understand at the end of the day, we're all nice human beings and we want to help each other, right? And that's what I've realized in life. And so, asking for that and leveraging your strengths as you move up the ladder. And then, Rob, you talked about something which was unconscious bias, right? And I shared that most of my mentors through my career have been men, right? And some of them I have nothing in common with. I don't look like them. I don't sound like them. I think very differently from them. But being able to find those mentors who will support you and the sponsors.
Yes.
And I think for women, it's not only the mentorship, it's also the sponsorship. And that is something I think that you need to, as women, focus on that one. I think it doesn't come as intuitively to most women, right? But I think that might be and another thing that I will say from my personal experience about myself and a lot of women I know is we're perfectionists to a certain extent. Like you want to be there at 110% before you ask for the role. And I always say is, hey, if you're not at 80%, ask for the role, and then you can learn the other 20% while you're on the role, right? So don't hold yourself back. It's take a chance on yourself. Take a chance on yourself sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because with the whole theme of this pod and this podcast series being success and how we foster and create success and what that means to everyone, I think a common theme that you've mentioned, whether it's to do with women in the workplace, whether it's to do with younger generations in the workplace, or even people who have got to the top and the way that they've got to the top, I think humility and humbleness and being conscious of the fact that you can't do everything by yourself and you do need that support network or that team behind you in order to truly be successful is really quite an impactful thing to think about.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say add to that, David, is also being grateful to your team and appreciating them. I think that is a huge, because they are a huge part of your success, right? A huge part. Like building that team and then appreciating that. I think for me that's important. And that team is not necessarily only your team at work, but it's also your team at home, right? It's a work-life balance, choice, juggling act.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I think there's, we could talk about elements of success, or we could talk about elements of the data and AI world for probably hours and hours on end. I think you're super insightful, and the information that and the way that you convey the information is really quite thought-provoking. I think it would be great to circle back round in a year's time when we're on series 2 or 3 of the podcast and do this again and see what advancements there have been, because I could probably sit here and ask you now what the advancements over the next 5 years, the next 10 years are going to be. But to actually come back and do that at some point would be a great thing to do. But just, I guess, as one of the sort of final questions that I'm keen to hear your perspective on is, when you look at data, AI, and fostering success together, whether that's for the individual, the general person at home, the consumer, whether that's for large business, or whether that's for clients of yours, where do you see the biggest area of impact that the technology is going to have in driving whatever success means for all those different areas of people, business?
From a technology perspective, that's an interesting question, David. I didn't quite think about it. I think technology in general, I'm going to answer this one in general. I think technology is a tool. It's a means. It is not the end, right? Technology is here to make our lives easier and to take over the things that we don't really get joy out of doing, right? So for example, years ago, data entry used to be a profession, right? And I don't know how many people get joy out of reading a paper copy and typing it up in Excel, right? And so, but for me, that's what technology is. Technology is a tool to be able to give me the time to focus on what is it that I enjoy doing and to do that, right? And I think that's the journey. Like I'll end it up with saying this: success is a journey, and using technology is also a journey, because I can't say every year now, we should say every few weeks we get smarter, right? Or and we use technology in a better way to improve our quality of life, to be able to free time for us to do other things that we enjoy, and whether it is the people or whether it is the work or the firms or the companies, right? That's how we are using technology. Like, and especially the AI space has really been a disruptor for sure.
Makes real sense, and I love the circling up of success as a journey, Maria, and the journey that you've been on and that you are on is wonderful, and long may it continue. We probably need to wrap it up here, I reckon. But as David mentioned there, and I think you verbally signed yourself into another podcast with us in the future, Maria. So we could talk about your your continued journey. But we've covered so much, and it's just, you and I have had many conversations over the years. It's just amazing to be able to talk about this on this platform, and therefore be able to share you and your ideas and how you think and your personality with many people who hopefully will listen to this and get so much out of it. It's been insightful. It's been fun. You are wonderful to chat to, as always. And we just wanted to thank you for your time, and it's been amazing being here with you.
Well, thank you both. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, David. Talk to you soon.
Absolute pleasure.